Today we're talking swim baits. And before we can talk about a specific swim bait or a specific group of swim baits, we need to know what a swim bait is. So what is a swim bait? Swim baits are any baits that are designed to mimic through either look or action a bait fish. That leaves wide open for you to determine for you what a swim bait is. There are some baits that are definitely swim baits. There are some other baits that could be in both categories. Today, I'm going to share my top 6 swim baits, and then I have one extra special swim bait that I use that I believe can fit into many different categories. So be sure to stick around to the end to see what that one is. For me, I believe there are 3 different categories of swim baits, at least that I define as swim baits. I have the swim bait rigs, I have the soft plastic swim baits, and then I have larger, maybe not so much soft, but not so hard swim baits, and those will make more sense once I show you what those are. Let's start off with the first one. We're gonna dive into the swim bait rigs first. So my first one is right here. It's from River to Sea, and basically this is a rig. It's called a double popper, but the way that I use it is just like a swim bait. So I have a little trailer here that actually comes with this, and then you've got your 2 poppers. Toss this right out, and you just kind of swim it along. In the winter, you can do this really slow, and these little guys here rotate, and as they rotate, they pop the water. It's not, when you're going slow, it's not such a huge action that it's going to turn off a lot of the winter fish, but it is on top, so the fish do need to be active somewhat to be able to have this work. While this is one of my favorite swim baits to use, especially in the spring and summer, I do use it in the winter occasionally when I do see that the fish are actively after the bait fish. So this is the River to Sea. And all these baits that I'm listing will be in the description box below, so be sure to check that out. So my next rig is my live target. So as we can see here, we've got 3 dummies, a blade, and then our actual bait with our hook. And so this works pretty much all year round as well. And again, we want to use that nice, slow, steady retrieve. And so we'll get the action here, and with the little paddle tails that they have, it'll give that nice kicking action. This will draw them in, and I use the blade specifically when the color is murky, so it'll kind of give that extra flash and help the bass target this. So this is the live target rig, and I think it's a really good buy. So our next ones, they are all going to fall into our soft plastic swim baits. And what's unique about these ones, and they all share the same trait, is that they have a paddle tail. And so the tail will provide most of the action as it swims through the water column, but then you start to get into the actual body of the bait, which kind of separates them. You have some that are smooth, some that have ribs. You can use whatever you want to use that you determine that is best for your conditions, but these are the 3 that I use. The first bait that I use in this category that is probably the most versatile is the Kitech Swim Impact, the 4-inch, and I'll have to put my hand there since it's translucent. And as we can see, it's got ribs along the body, and it's got a paddle tail. Now this is one of the bigger paddle tails, so it does provide quite a bit of action, and if you happen to find that the water is around 48 to 50 degrees and the bass are somewhat active but not really active, you can actually use this with the most action that it has, and you should be able to hook them up. But if they are not really coming after this, some of the other brands of swim baits like this that have the paddle tails, they won't provide as much action as most of the times they're smooth body, and so that might work out. But this has a squid scent in it, and it seems to work really well either as a trailer, by itself, swimming it with a underspin. There's many different techniques that you can use for this. The next bait that I use in this category of paddle-tailed swim baits is the exact same one from Kitech. It's a Swim Impact, but it's the 6-inch one. And as we can see there, it's identical to the one that we had before in the shad pattern again. And this one provides the same kind of action, except it's bigger. And we want to start using the bigger ones now that the water is probably around the coldest it's going to get during the winter, and the bass are going to move very slowly. And they're going to use that energy that they're saving for the spawn to go after big meals that they can just get one time and they don't have to chase it around everywhere. So this works great when we want to catch a bigger bass. The next bait that I use in the soft paddle tail swim bait category is not a Kitech, but it's almost identical in every single way. And here it is. It's basically the same thing, except this is an 8-inch, much bigger, and it has a much bigger paddle tail. So I'll pull this out when there is absolutely nothing doing and I can't get anything to bite. I'll just go bigger. And so most of the times you might want to go smaller, more into the finesse kind of baits, smaller jigs, smaller hooks, drop shots. But if you're trying to swing for the fences and catch one of the biggest fish of the year and you really haven't had success on anything else, I go bigger, especially when it comes to swim baits. So the 8-inch works phenomenally in those situations. And another spot that you might want to use this in, even if the fish are biting on the smaller ones, is say if you're in a team tournament. You get one of your partners to get on the bait that is actually catching fish so you guys can meet your limit, and then you have the other one start to throw the ginormous stuff to try and get the biggest fish. It's a good tactic you use. I don't believe everybody uses it. I don't really know how the other teams fish, but that's how me and my part. That wraps up the soft plastic swim baits. So let's get into the next category. And this is the category of where they're either hard or soft or a combination of the two. And they don't really have their own category other than swim baits. So the first one that I use is a toxic. This thing here, as you can see, toxic swim baits. They are huge, they're all hard, they have a lip on the front to get them down into the water column, and they have the hinged body with the soft tail. Now, this is not going to be for everybody. You can use this really well on the California Delta or a place like Clear Lake where there are monsters. If you're on a lake or a reservoir that has more of the cookie kind of bass, the 11 to 12 inch, pound to 2 pound fish, this is probably not going to work. But what's really great about this bait is that it draws in the big fish that want that big meal, as we discussed about earlier. Now, this bait still, even for those people who fish on those bodies of water where this would be effective, is still probably not for everybody because this bait is $130. Yes, I said that correctly, $130 from Toxic. And you don't want to lose this, because if you lose it, you're going to be crying. This is probably the most expensive bait that I have on my boat or my kayak. And so my final bait that I have, that bonus 7th one that I absolutely love to use, that I can't use all year round, but I have to use in this time of year, is my Savage Gear 8-inch trout. And I love this bait. I can't describe how much I love it. You can put a nail weight in the tail to kind of get it down. You can rig it on the bottom. You can rig it on the front. And when the bass bite onto this, the hook kind of comes out and it separates from our bait. This allows the fish to be hooked over here with less chance of this getting in the way. And so we can play that fish in without having to really worry about losing it. Or let's say they break off. We'll still have our bait, and our hook will go and we'll have to change our hook. But that's a really unique design. It just kind of slides right here in the body, and there's a little place for it to hook in, and you'll feel it. So this is the Savage Gear trout, and this is a much more affordable than the Toxic baits. You can find this on sale usually around $20 to $25, and I highly recommend everybody pick one of these up, whether it's the 6-inch or the 8-inch, and just keep it for slow days or days that you really want to swim bait fish. But you do have to have a rod that's capable of throwing this because it is quite heavy. It's really a mixture of soft plastic, and on the middle of the body, it's really hard and rigid. So that is all for today on our swim baits. So if you have any specific questions or comments about these swim baits, please leave them down below. And also, let me know what your favorite swim bait is. Maybe it's one I haven't heard of and I'd like to give it a try. Thanks again. Please think about subscribing to the channel. Catch you next time.